Hello, Garland Nixon here. And as Donald Trump seems to be willfully accepting his position as the lamest of foreign policy lame duck presidents, we got breaking news. Judge Cannon seals evidence in Trump assassination case involving Ryan Routh, citing exceptionally grave damages to U.S. national security. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and let's start off. We got a couple of things going on. We got some interesting news about Ryan Routh. We're going to start off with Trump's foreign policy, and in particular towards Russia. I mean, we could go elsewhere, but towards Russia. Okay. So Donald Trump, let's not forget, he came out saying, we got to remember this. We must understand Russia. Remember this. Donald Trump started off talking about NATO expansion, and he said, hey, I understand. Remember him saying, I understand? I understand that Putin, they never say Russia or the Russians. There's no such country as Russia. Doesn't exist. You only say Putin. In the same way that the liberals only say Trump, in the same way that the Zionists only say whatever, Assad, a big part of the neocon. You're listening to neocon foreign policy discussion when there are no countries involved, when there are only names involved. That's neocon foreign policy discussion, because that's the discussion that is used to deceive people. What you do, it's quite simple. You pretend the country doesn't exist. You only talk about an individual. You demonize the individual, and then you talk about how you must stop this evil demonized individual. So Putin, Donald Trump started off saying, basically, I understand, hey, NATO's getting close. Hey, we're in his neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. He can't argue that he doesn't know. He can't argue that he doesn't really understand this is about NATO expansion. And let me add this. If Donald Trump's discussion about understanding all of that is true, if he's understanding what's going on with the Russians, he wants a oneness with the Russians and all of this kind of stuff, then you have to explain this to me. As the lunatics in Europe, who are the ostensible leaders of Europe, right? The Macrons, the Starmers, the Merzes, as they say, look, we don't want to live, we don't want to survive, we all want to get nuked. We understand that to go to war between Europe and Russia means that all of our people die and us too in a nuclear conflict. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. That's the direction we're going. Hopefully we'll all be nuked by 2027. But if that doesn't work, maybe 2029 or 30. We'll start this war with Russia, and then it'll be nukes in about 5 minutes and we'll all be destroyed. That's our plan, right? So as they say that, but we must first buy lots of arms from the US. We must build up this mighty army to be nuked in an hour. Right. But that's our plan. That's their plan. That's what they want to go with. Right. I suspect the people in Europe might not be on board with that plan, but so much. OK. But if Donald Trump knew so much and understood so much, when the European says, hey, we want to plan for a war, we got to get ready for a war with Russia, Donald Trump would say, time out, guys. I want to have a talk with you. Why don't you just make a deal with Russia? I want to make a deal with Russia. Why don't you just make a deal? Why do you have to prep for a war? It's going to go nuclear. Everybody's going to die. Donald Trump is so concerned about lives. We've got to stop the killing in Ukraine, but nowhere else, right? Ukraine, we must stop the killing. What about Gaza? Huh? Ooh, what? I don't understand. Right? Oh, those are the Zionists. Well, I'm a Zionist. So, hey, that's all they do is kill people without a genocide and mass deaths. What value is there to have Zionists? The fulfillment of Zionism cannot exist without, mass death and genocide. So, okay, come on, let's not be silly here. But if he really gave a crap and was trying to do anything to stop escalation, he would say to Europeans, hey guys, why don't you talk to the Russians? But he doesn't. What does he say? When they say, yes, we got to buy lots of weapons, and get ready for war with Russia. Trump says, great idea. Buy lots of weapons from us. You can never buy enough weapons. Buy lots more weapons. Hooray. Good news. And he comes home. He says, hey, good news, everybody. The Europeans are going to buy. Look what I'm doing. I'm selling them $1 billion, 10 billion, 50 billion. I'm selling them lots of weapons. And nobody says, what are they going to use that for again? Oh, the war with Russia. I'm the peace president, right? No. So the whole thing is a fraud. Donald Trump, either there's two options. Either he was always a neocon, and you choose your option. It's up to you. Either he was always a bloodthirsty neocon and he was lying the whole time, option A, or he wasn't a bloodthirsty neocon and he's been compromised and converted and overridden by the bloodthirsty neocons. It doesn't matter which one you believe. It comes out to the same thing, right? For instance, a guy's going to get mauled by a grizzly bear. You can say, well, maybe the grizzly bear is mad because that guy's in his territory and grizzly bears are territorial, or perhaps the grizzly bear is hungry and he sees that guy as a source of protein. Either way, the guy gets eaten by the grizzly bear. You decide what justification you need to try to understand in your mind why the guy got eaten by a grizzly bear. But either way, he's getting eaten by a grizzly bear. Either way, what we got now is neocon Don, right? What we got Donald Trump. We have a foreign policy which is fully controlled by the neocons one way or the other. And how we got there, where we ever were, is irrelevant. This is where we are. So let's talk about what Donald Trump's up to right now. Donald Trump is going to make these demands, absurd demands of the Russians. The absurdity of them is this. It doesn't take into account that the Russians actually have agency. This was the beginning problem when the Russians forwarded a list to Tony Blinken and NATO in 2021 in December, mid to late December. I think it was 16th, 17th, 19th, whatever. And they said, look, we got some issues with NATO expansion, with NATO on our border. We got to talk. Or there could be, as they wrote down, military/technical response, right? And NATO's answer was, NATO, the leader of NATO said, basically, you don't get a say in this. The Russians don't get a say in this. And Blinken's State Department said, this is not even a starting point. That was the beginning. Now, the Russians are still saying, we got an issue with NATO on our border. And what's Trump saying? Basically the same thing, because he refuses to acknowledge the validity of their claim. Hey, I got a problem. I'd like to offer you. Imagine this. You and I are making a bargain, a deal, working on something, right? I'm a salesman and I want to sell you a widget. And I say, I'd like to sell you this widget because it'll help you to run faster. And you say, I'm in a wheelchair, can't run. But I do need something that would help me, I don't know, exercise my arms and legs. I can't, my arms and upper body. I can't move my legs. And you say, see, this widget, if you use it, it'll strengthen your legs. And what do you run? Maybe a 4.5, 40. It'll take you up to a 4.3. You'll be world-class speed. What do you think about that? And you're like, I don't know if you heard me. I'm in a wheelchair, dude. And I need something to exercise. I called you in here because you sell exercise equipment. I need something for my upper body. And you're like, the guy's like, okay, how about this? Knee braces and foot pads. That way, when you sprint, see, it'll take all of the pressure off your knee. And you're like, I'm in a wheelchair, dude. And this guy's trying to sell you something that he'll never sell you because you're in a wheelchair and you want something different. And he refuses to even listen to what you're saying. I'm in a wheelchair. That can never happen. Oh, okay. All right. How about a bicycle? Bicycles are great because you can pedal real hard up and down. I got a 21 speed. It's fantastic. You would love it. Right? You can never, as we say in Zen, the tiger and the shark shall never fight because there is no common ground, right? As long as the Russians are saying the problem is NATO on our doorstep, and Trump is saying, how about we work out a ceasefire in which NATO comes to your doorstep even more, right? We got this ceasefire. NATO countries will then send more war material and troops right to your doorstep. How about that? Russia's like, the problem, it already is NATO on our doorstep. Fair enough. But okay, that won't work. Why don't we do this? We'll send NATO troops to your doorstep. Okay, let's start there. We'll send NATO, and then and the Russians are like, NATO troops. Did you didn't hear what I said? So of course we heard what you said. You want NATO troops at your doorstep, and we're willing to send them there. Right? That's it. In a nutshell, it is a refusal to even acknowledge the Russians as whoever was in charge of NATO said back then. The Russians don't get a say in this. It's a failure to acknowledge that the Russians do, in fact, get a say in this, right? They do. And here's how. It's one thing to say, we'll do what we want, but there is a kinetic reality. There is a physical reality. I could walk up to somebody and say, I'm going to kick your ass. And the guy says, okay, I'm going to take your wallet. Okay. So give up the wallet, I'm going to take it. The guy should say, well, there's a physical reality here. You got to take my wallet. Let's see you do it. I don't think you can, but I'm willing to do everything I can to prevent it. He puts his dukes up. He says, let's go. There's a physical reality. And I say, well, you give the wallet up or I'm going to beat you up. Okay, let's do this. Do it this way then. Tell you what, I won't beat you up. Just hand over the wallet. Now, the guy's already said, I'm not giving up my wallet. And I'm just continually trying to negotiate for him to give up the wallet. But there is a physical reality. The guy says, look, here's what I'm doing. A, ain't giving you the wallet. And B, I'm getting out of here. I'm not standing here and talk to you anymore. No, you're not leaving. You have to give up the wallet. And the guy's like, well, here's where we are. We've come to an impasse here. If you don't take this wallet, you ain't ever going to get it. So you want to stand there telling me how much I got to give up the wallet? Feel free. I'm gone. The physical reality now, the rubber has met the road, as they say. Either I got to take the wallet or stand there and talk to myself because this guy's leaving. That's what the issue is with Trump. The issue becomes, if I try to force an issue, what are my options? What are my options? Well, do I, when the guy says no, then I got to say, well, I'll stop you. At some point, it has to be physical. It has to be kinetic. If a person refuses. Years ago, I remember telling my daughter when she went to high school, and I told her, look, you have complete and total liberty. I told her about this stories. I won't get into it to a book, I love to read. And one of them was by Viktor Frankl. And it was called, what was the name of that Viktor Frankl book? Man's Search for Meaning. Pretty good book, actually. But here's the bottom line. What I relayed to her was, nobody can make you do anything. I can say to you, do this, and you could say no. And I could say, if you don't, I will fill in the blank. Whatever it is. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to throw an alligator at you, and he's going to bite your arm off. I'm going to do whatever. I could say a million things that I'm going to do. And you could say, you can do all of those things, but I ain't doing it. I'm willing to give my life. You can say, if you don't do this, I'll shoot you. You could say, okay, well, you're going to have to shoot me. I'm not going to do it. Ultimately, no matter what threat someone makes, they can't force you to do it. They can threaten everything in the world, but ultimately, they can't force you to do it. They can come in and fight you and kill you. They still can't force you to do it. In the instance of a war, a person can say, I'm going to come in and fight your troops and push them out of this area, and I'm going to take this area. And you can say, well, I'm going to counterattack. You can continue to counterattack. And now what they say is, we're going to fight you and hold off this area. This is our area. Effectively, that's what the Russians are saying. Effectively, keep in mind something. The Russians are saying our border, two kinds of borders, right? Your physical border of your country, your legal physical border of your country, and your strategic border or strategic depth. How far, how close up can you let your adversaries get before they create such a threat to you that it becomes a mortal threat? It's like this. If I say, get back, don't come any closer, and I hold my hands out, I may have made a decision that if you come within this distance, that I have reserved the right to attack first. Put my arms out. Dude, I don't want any trouble. I'll put my arm out. If you come any closer than this, I might have reserved the right to attack. If you get closer than that, why? Because you're too close now. I'm not going to let you get up in my face and talk this close. You could do anything. You could have a knife and shiv me. No. I may say, if you get any closer than this, I reserve the right to attack first. Because if you're too close, you can attack me before I can do anything, kill me, and take me out before I even have a chance to react. I'm not going to put myself in that position. That's what the Russians are saying. And that's what countries say. We have a strategic border. Cuba, right. Bay of Pigs, all that kind of stuff, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis. We have a strategic border, and we've been attacked by through Ukraine before. It ain't happening again. So no. And what they've also said to NATO and the U.S. is, look, we're willing to talk. We're willing to have a discussion and come up with a deal where you guys stay far enough that we're comfortable and we don't present any threat to you. Let's do this. Now, NATO, i.e., the U.S., says, no, we're not going to do this. We can come to Ukraine if we want to. Well, here's the truth of the matter. Because they really do have malicious intentions towards Russia. Come on. They literally wrote documents and had meetings about tearing Russia to pieces, balkanizing Russia, taking Russia's stuff. They wrote in books, they wrote in policy papers how they could unbalance Russia and take Russia apart limb by limb, right? If somebody literally there we go. Look at this. Watch this. If somebody literally writes this paper, Rand, which is the Pentagon, overextending and unbalancing Russia, assessing the impact of cost-imposing options, bunch of neocons, right? Boom, there you go. Economic cost, but watch this. And Ukraine. So let's go here. In that document, providing lethal aid to Ukraine, but any increase, there's Ukraine again, right? We go down. Providing lethal aid to Ukraine, likelihood of success in extending Russia, moderate, benefits high, cost and risks high. So they said in their own plan for how they're going to take Russia, hey, we can provide lethal aid to Ukraine, moderate chance of success, high benefits, and high risk. So they already knew it was a high risk. Keep going. Muscovites protesting the war in Ukraine. There you go. And Russia support. And then we'll go here. Increasing U.S. forces in Europe, increasing European NATO member ground capabilities, and deploying large number of NATO forces on the Russian border would likely only have limited effects on extending Russia, right? Increasing the size and frequency. So what am I saying? They wrote a document. They literally there you go. Sorry about that. They literally wrote a document about how they were going to take Russia out. So now they're saying, Russia's saying, no, you're not. And this is what we need to make sure that we're okay. Let's say somebody, Garland's been listening, Brian. Oh, I love Brian Burnett, but I've done this stuff for a long time myself. I've covered that document for years now. Everybody should know about that document. Everybody should read that document and also look in the Grand Chessboard, the Big New Brzezinski's document where he talks about the same thing, right? Bottom line is this. You got people saying we're going to take Russia to pieces. And now Trump's saying, okay, here's what we'll do. The one thing you don't want is NATO troops on your border. Let's do a ceasefire so we can what the one is so I can help. Sorry about so we can put NATO troops on your border. Right? That's the one thing they don't want. Sorry about that. This stupid phone. Let me turn off the old AI assistant. There we go. I'm so tired of that crap. I already know they're listening. They're listening all the time. So why do they have to answer? Anyway, so the bottom line is this. Here's what I'm getting at. Russia drew a red line. If you put, people always talk about Russia doesn't enforce any red lines. Yeah, this whole thing is the enforcement of a red line. They drew a red line. And the red line was this. You got to get out of Ukraine. NATO said no. And then Russia said, you can stay in Ukraine under one condition, that you fight to keep it. You can stay in Ukraine. I can't tell you to leave Ukraine, but you're going to have to fight to stay there. You can stay on my border if you want to, but you're going to have to fight to stay there. See, that's not what I said. If some guy's getting up in my face, dude, don't come up in my face. You're threatening me. The guy says, I'll do what I want. Fair enough. You can come up in my face if you want to, but you're going to have a fight on your hands. Then if you don't mind fighting, that's fine. We'll fight and we'll see who wins and what happens, all that kind of stuff. You're not going to stay. I'm not saying you can't stay up in my face. I'm saying you can't stay up in my face without a fight. So Russia's saying, we're not saying you can't stay in Ukraine. We're saying you can't stay in Ukraine without a fight. We're not saying you can't threaten us. We're just saying you can't threaten us without a fight. We're a superpower. You're not talking about Iraq. You're not talking about Lebanon or anything like that. You're talking about a nuclear superpower. You want to fight us on our border, you can fight us on our border, but we're willing to do it. We ain't whacking down. We ain't walking away. What you going to do? Barbecue or mildew, as they say. So Trump had said to Russia, now he's sending Witkoff to Russia. You know what Witkoff's going to do? Hey, Russia, yeah, you know that deal that you just keep rejecting? Yeah, well, I'd like to make the offer again. How can we get there? You know, the one that you said there's no way to get there from here. What was it, REM? You can't get there from here. Yeah, all right. That's like me saying, I want to buy your car. How much? And I say, what are you asking for it? I'm asking for 10,000. I'll give you $100. Get out of here. What are you talking about? All right, I'll come over your house and we'll talk. Get to your house. All right, I'm ready to sell the car. What are you offering? $100. I already told you I wasn't going to sell that. Oh, okay. Let me go talk to my financiers and I'll be back to offer you 100 next week. No, I'm not selling for 100. Fair enough. I'll send somebody else over then, one of my other guys, to come offer you $100. No. So Witkoff, basically, Witkoff is not going over there to offer Putin $100 for a $10,000 car. This is an exercise, nothing but another exercise. They already know the outcome. And Donald Trump, I think, is trapped into a corner and he's hoping for a way out of the corner. And I don't think there's a way out. He's wasting his time. He's making offers that there's no chance of. And if Donald Trump calls himself Mr. Deal Maker, if you are truly a deal maker, let's just give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. And let's just say this. Let's, for 1 second, may not necessarily be true, but for the sake of this, let's use that as an intellectual exercise. If Donald Trump is some kind of a great deal maker, and he's made business deals, and he understands the deal, the art of the deal, as he says, then he already knows that there's no chance of that deal. If he is a deal maker, he already knows. If you're a good deal maker, what do you have to do? If you're a good salesperson, what do you have to do? You have to understand the person you're trying to sell to. You got to understand what they want. You got to understand how they want it. You got to understand how they're going to use it. You got to understand. You got to come up with a plan to sell it with them. You got to gain trust so that they trust you enough that they'll do business with you. There's a number of things you want to do if you're a salesperson, if you want to make that sale. But first and foremost, you got to understand the customer, who they are, what they want, what are their needs. Now, if Trump is some art of the deal guy, not saying he is, but let's just say he was, then he would already understand what the Russians want. And he would furthermore already know that it's a waste of time for Witkoff to go there and offer him $100 for a $10,000 car. If he's a great deal maker, he already knows that. So under that particular perspective, from that perspective, that means that he already knows, let's just say this, we already know it. I find it hard to believe that Trump and his people don't already know it. Okay, that they're wasting their time. So Witkoff is not going there for Putin, Russia, any NATO to get a deal. He's going there as an exercise, I think, for the American people, because it's part of the rhetoric. We tried everything we could to get a deal, and so we're going to have to destroy our own economy. What do you got there? Got a suicide pill. Well, if you take the suicide pill, we all die with you. True. But I did everything I could. I want you to know I did everything I could before I swallowed the economic suicide pill. So what we're looking at, sorry, I just hit the table with my knee. So what we're looking at now is Donald Trump getting close to August 8th, at which time he's all told us he's going to take an economic suicide pill. What are you going to do August 8th? All right. You already know the outcome. I'm going to demand that China stop buying Russian oil. China's already said they won't. Okay. I'm going to demand that India stops buying Russian oil. They already said they won't do that. Turkey, yeah, absolutely not. All the countries, none of them will be able to buy Russian gas and oil anymore. They're not going to buy it. Well, in that case, I'm going to hit them with 100% tariffs. What will happen then? Well, if we already found out in March, if we didn't know, the shelves will be empty. Massive layoffs. Our economy will crumble. And likelihood won't recover, right? As I've said, you can't, they're playing around with this economy. They're goofing around with this economy. This ain't a strong economy. This is a weak economy, and it can't take a heavy punch. It's already punch. Our economy is punch drunk. One more punch, and it's going to TKO, buddy. TKO. What Donald Trump is saying is, I'm going to punch the economy again. I'm going to hit it in the back of the head with a baseball bat as hard as I can. Because what happens? China said, look, now, and what did Bassett say? Well, China's already said they're going to keep buying Russian oil, which means they'll get 100% tariffs. India, and how did Lindsey Graham put it? Lindsey Graham says, well, we're going to crush China's economy. China and India, we're going to crush their economies. Putin's going to learn that we're going to crush their economies. Now, is he stupid enough to truly believe that we can crush India and China's economies and that it'll have no effect on ours? See, what he's really saying is this. Do what I want or I'll shoot, basically, or I've got a backpack on. I'm a economic suicide bomber. Do what I want or I'll pull the cord and I'll blow us all up. Now, it just so happens that we're standing in the room with them. So what they're saying is August 8th, if you got a business where you buy stuff with China, yeah, you pay double. You'll pay double. What happens to Walmart? And what happens if China says, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to retaliate. Like they did before. We're calling all of our ships back. Your ports are all going to close down. How's Amazon going to work out? How's all these dollar stores? All your dollar stores will close. Amazon, you might as well forget that. How about Home Depot and all that stuff that comes from China? How about your electronics stores, Micro Center, on and on, all the Best Buy, you name it, all the stuff that comes from China? Our economy would be effectively dead. So I'll believe it when I see it. In a way, this is going to be twisted. This is going to seem paradoxical. In a way, I almost hope Trump does, because perhaps the American people need to learn, and perhaps Trump needs to be put in that position. And that is, if he does, here's the other part of it. He's strengthening BRICS because the people in BRICS are saying this country is so unstable and unreliable. Man, I don't know how we're going to do business with these people. We have got to plan for the future, and the future can't include these kooks. So I think that tariff, what happens? I'm telling you, at some point, and maybe you may be tired of me hearing me say this. At some point, people are going to walk away from the table and not come back. You know what I mean? Okay, all right. I'm going to hit you with 100% tariffs if you don't do what I want. Okay, so you don't do what I want, and then 3 weeks later, Trump says, I'm lifting the tariffs, and then you come back and sell stuff to the U.S. again. Now, here he is again, 4 months later. 4 months later. You know what? Everybody's got to do what I want, or these countries are going to get 100% tariffs. You're China, 100%. But we just did that 4 months ago. Yeah, well, we're doing that again. You're getting 100% tariffs. What happens when China says, you know what? I'm not doing this dance with you anymore. I'm not. Like somebody in a relationship who's unhappy, and their significant other drives them crazy to the point where they say, I'm not doing this with you anymore. And the person says, oh yeah, well, you have to go out and rent a place on your own, and you barely afford it, and you're gonna have to do this, and how are you going to do that, and this and that? And the person says, I'll figure that out. This is not working for me. I'm going on about my way, right? Okay. What happens if China, what's his name, Xi Jinping, goes on TV to the Chinese people and says, look, Chinese people, we got a problem. U.S. is about 12%. About 12% of our exports go to U.S. And I know it's going to be an economic pain to lose 12% of our exports, but we can't keep losing it and getting it back and losing it and getting it back. So here's what the government's got together, and here's what we've decided to do. We're cutting off our business with the U.S. And we're going on about our business. We're going to work on other buyers. We've decided that people who are suffering economically, that the government's going to help benefit them. Businesses that are hurting, the government's going to help that. We're going to do some things we did to help people. But Somebody had 4%. It may be, I've heard 4% also of their exports, but let's say 4%. Let's go split it. And let's say 8%. Okay, whatever the case may be. But if it's 4%, that's even better. But what happens if China says, we're notifying the US effective immediately, we're cutting off exports to the US, and we're not going to negotiate to have them back. All rare earth magnets, everything is cut off. We're not negotiating to have them back. In fact, we're not negotiating any of this stuff. The US chooses to use economics as a weapon, and we'll just do things our way. It was great when we were doing business with them, but those days are over. So we've come up with some plans for businesses who had U.S. Business and don't anymore, and the government's going to reimburse you and work with you. But that's that. We're and if Trump calls, hey, I just heard from Walmart and Amazon, and they've said that they'd like me to lower those tariffs to 50%. So effectively, I'm lowering them to 50%. And the Chinese say, well, that's nice. All right. Have a nice day. All right. Are the ships going to start? No, no, we've moved on. So thank you for lowering the tariffs. If we decide one day in the way off in the future to start selling stuff to you again, we'll let you know. But right now, nah, we're not going to bother. You can keep the tariffs. You can get rid of the tariffs. Whatever you want to do, that's up to you. We're not doing business with you. So we're moving on. We're going another. Have a nice day. No hard feelings. Hey, you're a sovereign nation internally, and you've made the decisions you're going to make. So we're not going to worry about it. I think that day is coming with some companies and maybe China. If I was China, I'd say that's it for rare earths. We negotiated with you in good faith, and now you're trying to tell us who we can and can't buy stuff with. We ain't trying to tell you. You're trying to tell us. At some point, then what happens? You go to Walmart and the shelves are empty. What about all people that work at Walmart? Amazon, all these trucks riding all over the place delivering Amazon stuff, and there ain't nothing to deliver. They go to Amazon website. They got like 5 things that were made in God only knows where. Turkey, nah, because that you can't do that because that's going to have 100% tariffs. And then India, not so good. On and on. What do you do? So my point is, Donald Trump's threats against Russia's partners are pointless, or worthless, and are counterproductive, and may have very significant economic consequences for the American people. They might be pushing this thing a little too far. His discussion with Russia about some kind of a ceasefire or deal that Russia said they're never going to do is not even about Russia. It's about internal politics and Donald Trump running around and dancing around with the neocons. So Russia's not involved. Russia's not part of that conversation. They are a prop. Hey, Witkoff, go over to the Russians and offer them something that we know they're not going to take. Russia's nothing but a prop, and they know a prop. They're a prop, and they're not going to be a prop. So they're going to be like, come on over, Witkoff. What's up? Hey, will you guys take the deal that I told you I'd never you'd never take? No. Yeah, I told Trump you wouldn't. Okay, bye. Get back on your plane and go home. They'll be good to him. They'll serve him a nice meal. They'll take him somewhere. Putin will sit down and shake hands with him and just say, if you're offering us that crap you offered before, we already know the answer to that, right? Where will say, yeah, but I wanted to get a free dinner. The food's delicious here at the Kremlin, and I was hoping to get in a free, maybe some nice shot of vodka or something good. Yep, sounds good. All right, bye. That's it. It's over. We're wasting all of our times. Trump already knows he's wasting his time, and this is about internal politics. It has nothing to do with Russia. Zero, nothing. And the great thing for the neocons is this. They hate Trump. They don't like MAGA. MAGA's already dissolving. So not only do they get to go after Putin and teach Putin a lesson, not only do they get to do that, they get to crush our economy and then blame Trump, because they're all going to turn on him. When the economy goes to pieces, they're going to go, oh, look at that. Trump has destroyed our economy with his economic decisions. How about a fool? The man's an idiot. He must be replaced immediately. And then Trump, and might I add, at that time, MAGA's just about had it with him between Epstein and all that crap and Gaza, you name it. So MAGA's out the door. So they get to isolate him from his base and then finish him off. and then put old Peter Thiel Jr. in as president. Now, let me continue. There's another interesting story. In case you haven't seen it, I want to touch base. Breaking. Judge Cannon seals evidence in Trump assassination case involving Ryan Routh, citing exceptional grave damages to national security. What do we got? Things just got even stranger as Judge Cannon had sealed evidence in the case, and in doing so cited exceptional grave damages to U.S. national security. There we go. The DOJ has classified evidence against wannabe Trump assassin Routh. Was this guy Ukrainian asset or something? So you see all of this stuff. The United States properly invoked the provisions of SIPA and its classified information privileges as to the information reference to the classified order. Accordingly, it's hereby ordered in the judge's files. The United States motion is granted. The United States motion, all company materials are hereby sealed and shall remain preserved in the custody of the Classified Information Security Office in accordance with established court procedures. Right? So what do we have? We've got now basically a significant amount of evidence, we don't know how much, allegedly against Ryan Routh is now sealed. Now, here's the way the reports, the way the news is, the neoliberal, neoconservative news is reporting it. They're basically saying, yes, Ryan Routh, the judges ruled that Ryan Routh will not be allowed to see the evidence against him. Well, that's one way to look at it. If you're so concerned about him or justice or what have you, if you understand SIPA, you understand this is something that happens, in a lot of cases where, imagine that it's totally unconstitutional that the government can say, we're going to use evidence against Garland, but Garland can't see the evidence. Absolutely unconstitutional. Absolutely. But if you believe that the Constitution is anything other than a piece of toilet paper that the government wipes its butt with, and the ruling elite does the same, then you've been had anyway. It is something there to give us the illusion that there's order, that the ruling elite and the government goes by rules. No, they don't. No, they don't go by rules. But at any rate, so what is it? So there's we already know a couple of things. There was a lot of suspicion around Ryan Routh because he was running back and forth to Ukraine, because he was involved in the running of mercenaries. At least we know that he had made attempts to be involved in running mercenaries, which, interestingly enough, what's his name? The General Kellogg, his daughter was involved in that NGO USAID stuff. And one of the companies, at least one of the companies that she was involved in, appears to be a mercenary running company, right? So my point being, this is all CIA, Mossad, on and on and on, intel stuff. It seems to me that Routh, if he was running mercs in and out of Ukraine, he was connected to intelligence. It also has been suspected that his wife was connected to intelligence. There was information about a company that's only like 3.5 miles from CIA headquarters that she allegedly worked for. There was allegations that she was paying all of his bills. I mean, how's this guy flying all over the country, all over the world? He's got nothing, making no money. Who's paying? Somebody's footing the bill. Apparently, at some point, said that his wife was fitting the bill. So it seems as though he had a wife maybe that was also his handler. There's all these suspicions a lot of suspicions going on about Ryan Routh and his wife and his connections to intelligence, right? And ultimately, this will fuel the suspicion because there's something that they don't want. But forget, Ryan Routh can't see it. We are not allowed to see it. We're never going to know. And think about this. What they said was that if the evidence against Ryan Routh comes out, it will be a exceptionally great, what they're citing is exceptionally grave damages to U.S. national security. Grave damages. And the judge ruled, yeah, boy, here's basically what happened. They got supposedly evidence against Routh. And what they said is, if that gets out, it'll be grave evidence, grave damages to national security. And apparently the judge says, holy crap, yeah, people ain't going to be happy about that. We better keep it shut. Now, you could look at it individually, or you could add the Epstein case. See my point? Here, my point is this. So what do we know about the Epstein case? What is fairly obvious about the Epstein case? Epstein was working for the United States government and the Israeli government. At minimum, most likely MI6 was involved. And he was involved in child sexual assault and child trafficking, international, across state lines, on and on, for the purposes of sexual assault. And he should have been prosecuted for that, but he wasn't. And that he was apparently transporting minors across state lines, recruiting, trafficking minors for the sexual assaults and abuse by adults, very rich and very powerful adults. Apparently I've heard numbers of 200 to 220. I don't know the exact numbers. These are the numbers that I've heard. You can look it up yourself, that the FBI interviewed these people. And they said, yes, I was trafficked for I was sexually assaulted, whatever, but I was a minor. And it was and they were given some names of some of the people who were involved in the sexual acts, right? So it's not necessarily just a list, like you've written a list of names, but within these investigations, there are numerous names that have come out, okay? And the FBI, the U.S. government, the Department of Justice, has these investigations and has these names. Well, the first question, before you get to why won't they release the list, why won't they release the names, whatever you want to call it, a list, a name, whatever, why won't they release the names, is this. If you went to the FBI tomorrow and you were 14 and you said, Garland Nixon sexually assaulted me, what do you think the FBI would do? Don't you think they'd come to my house, they'd grab my computers, they'd grab my phones, they'd grab me, they'd take me away, right? That would be the expected thing. They have evidence that felonies were committed. The obvious question is, why would the FBI not act on clear evidence that felonies have been committed? So before you even get to, here's my point. Before you even get to why won't they release the list, legally speaking, that's the smallest part of it. That's the smallest part of it. They don't need to release the list. What they need to start off by doing is, what do we got? We have a witness that says, I was sexually assaulted by, fill in the name, this billionaire, rich guy, person who runs a country, whatever. At this point, the FBI is supposed to open a case, aren't they? They're supposed to say, okay, we've got evidence of a crime, we've got to open a case, but they didn't. In 220 instances, they didn't open a single case. So when you start, the question begins not with the releasing the list. It begins with filing charges against people who are accused of committing felonious acts. Or statute of limitations, there you go. One thing for sure, there ain't a statute of limitations on felonies. So, in a nutshell, you're screwed. You can't, rape, no, sorry. Think about cold case files that people have been charged where they found out somebody committed a murder back in the 1960s. No statute of limitations there, buddy. You're going to jail. You're going to be charged with this crime. It's a cold case that happened in the 50s, in the 60s. You're going to be charged. The guy that killed Medgar Evers, it came out, what was he charged? Like 30 years later? Okay. But my point being, before you get to that, I mean, we as citizens feel like we have a right to know. But before we get to our right to know, government versus United States government versus Garland Nixon. And how can the government charge anybody with a crime if they're going to have a list of rich people, none of which will be charged when there's strong evidence? And see, I'll put it like this. They have admitted that they knew that there was an illegal sex ring. They have charged people with running an illegal sex ring. So they can't say we weren't sure if these crimes happened. They've already admitted that they believe the crimes happened and charged somebody with these crimes. So now each individual person that was involved in the crimes, there has to be a case opened against them. They haven't opened one case against anybody. So here's my point. Look at Ryan Routh. What they've said is there is no list. What does that mean? There is no list. Okay, fine. You don't have a list. Then make one up. There's no list. That could be true. We didn't make a list of all the individual names. Here's what we're telling you. We didn't ask you if a list already existed. We said we want to see a list. If someone says, if you say, Garland, I want to see a list of all the women you've dated in your life. Sorry, I don't have a list. No, we're not saying for you that you happen to have a list that you've written down. We're saying take out a pen as best you can, write every name down, right? So for them to say there is no list is irrelevant. That just means they didn't make one. So make one. You know who they are. Then what did they change it? The verbiage. Well, they want us to release the Epstein papers. We didn't ask for the Epstein papers. Whatever the hell Epstein papers are. We said we want to know the names of the people who are accused of this heinous crime. And we want to know why the hell not one of them has had not charged, has even had a criminal investigation opened against them. You had the evidence to open a criminal investigation against numerous people, many of whom are American citizens. How come you haven't opened an investigation against one of them? And why is it that literally somewhere between 2 and 4 former Israeli prime ministers regularly visited Epstein's house? Why is that? We'd like to know. Inquiring minds want to know. So my point is this. This is a pattern. In the same way that they said, okay, we got this thing going on with Epstein, but we can't let you see it. So forget it. It's not going to happen. This is the ruling elite. You go to jail for crimes. They don't. Okay. What about Ryan Routh and this whole thing going on here? A lot of people were suspicious. Think about this. A lot of people were suspicious about it. Some people thought it was an intelligence frame up, that it was all a fake. There's people that thought that. There are other people that thought, hey, I think he's working for the Ukrainian government or some other, whatever. And remember this, the Iranians are trying to kill Trump. And we're like, the Iranians are trying to kill. Come on, how stupid do you think we are? So there's all of this intrigue swirling around Ryan Routh. And what do? We can't tell you about the evidence. Why? Because it would be exceptional grave damages to U.S. national security. Right. So what now? Hey, was he found guilty? No. Oh, okay. He wasn't found guilty. Why? We can't tell you. Why? Because it would be exceptionally grave. It would create exceptionally grave damages to national security if you knew why he was found innocent or found guilty or anything else. Somebody said, who is Ryan Routh? Ryan Routh is the man who was accused of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. We were told that he was on the 5th hole and he had a gun waiting to shoot Trump. We were also told that he was a Ukrainiac and he wrote some book that was total insanity, which seemed to be, quite frank, a false flag style book. If you read it, it's a bunch of crap. But, and we're supposed to believe that he was crazy. None of it makes sense. I'm just saying that ultimately, don't just look at the Ryan Routh story now in that they're hiding information about Ryan Routh. Look at it in the context of Epstein, wherein the ruling elite, Trump, he's just a figurehead, a puppet, have said it's on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. And that's what someone says. Can we believe anything? No. You believe that they told you the truth about, I don't know, finding some guy's passport, that a plane slammed into the side of the building, blew up in thousands of degrees of heat, and it got one of the people inside a plane when it blew up with thousands, 2,000, 3,000 degrees, some thousands, let's call it 1,500 degree heat. And a passport, mine's right there, a little plastic passport somehow survived 1,000 degree heat and just fluttered off and dropped into the You believe that? Do you believe any of it? So my point is, this should wake up people who somehow believe some of this crap and thought they were told the truth about something. You're told the truth about nothing. Donald Trump already knows. Don't think that he's stupid and he thinks that doing this to China or doing this to India or tariffing somebody is going to make a difference. He knows it isn't. He's already said Russia's good at getting around the sanctions. He knows it's a waste of time. So Donald Trump's taking an action that he knows is a waste of time, that he knows is a fraud. I think Donald Trump is, to some extent, compromised, as if any of the rest of them isn't. I think Donald Trump also, here's what you have to understand. He don't work for you. Fooling yourself if you think he does. None of them work for you. Not Donald Trump, not Joe Biden, not Obama. None of them ever work for you. Not Trump is a puppet. They're all puppets. Trump's no different than being a puppet. This is the game. Joe Biden's wandering around, soiling himself every day. He didn't know what the hell was going on. He's completely mentally incapable of understanding anything. That should have been a hint that he wasn't in charge. It should have been a hint that presidents aren't in charge. And if a president tries to be in charge, they're going to kill him. That the whole Watergate, if you look at it, well, why in the world is it that the people that did the break-in were all CIA? Everybody was a CIA. And the whole Watergate was a fraud. Monica Lewinsky, boy, isn't it weird that the woman in the midst of the case, Linda Tripp, worked for military intelligence? You think that's a coincidence? It's all a fraud. It's all an operation. It's either a honeypot operation. That's all the whole Monica Lewinsky thing was. It was a honeypot operation. It's always some sort of a honeypot operation, some kind of a money laundering operation, a bunch of lies. And now Trump knows his threats are worthless. He knows they're worthless. He knows he's not stupid. He knows what he's doing. But we're going to pay the economic price. But Trump's a lame duck. What does he care? He's not trying to get elected again. He doesn't care. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Let me do this. Let me just say, if you can, you got Buy Me a Coffee or Cash App or whatever, PayPal, Patreon, whatever. Certainly, if you can, it would be highly appreciated if you can contribute to the channel. There's my P.O. box there, even if you can't. Follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Rumble, share this on all your social media platforms. Thank you very much. Have a great day. I'm out.